They'll never admit it out loud, but every person they meet now gets compared to you. Every conversation, every glance, every moment is measured against the way you once made them feel. And every single time, reality disappoints them. Because the truth is simple. You were irreplaceable, and they never realized it until you were gone. They didn't understand your worth when you were right there, loving them effortlessly. They mistook your kindness for abundance, as if people like you grow on trees. They thought they could do better. They thought they could upgrade. But now they're learning the cruelest lesson of all: quality doesn't repeat. They didn't realize your presence was rare. Your empathy, your patience, your loyalty, those things don't come packaged in every new face they chase. Now, every time they try to connect with someone else, the emptiness reminds them of what they threw away. It's a curse they placed on themselves. They wander from person to person, searching for something familiar, something comforting, something powerful, but it never arrives. Because the spark they felt with you wasn't chemistry, it was alignment, destiny, divine timing, and they shattered it with their own hands. They thought moving on would be easy. They thought replacing you would be quick. But now they're drowning in the realization that what you offered came once in a lifetime. And the people they seek now can't even match your shadow. Your silence haunts them. Your absence exposes the cheapness of everything they're settling for now. They can't find your depth in shallow waters. They can't find your strength in fragile hearts. They can't find your authenticity in people who only pretend. You were the standard, and nothing they meet now even comes close. They scroll through contacts, through messages, through memories, hoping something will numb the ache, but nothing does. Because the standard you set wasn't emotional, it was spiritual. You touched places in them they didn't even know existed, and they'll spend years trying to fill those empty spaces. Every new conversation reminds them of your wit. Every argument reminds them of your honesty. Every silence reminds them of your peace. They try to replicate the bond, but all they're doing is chasing ghosts, you being the biggest one. They didn't appreciate how you understood them without explanation. They didn't appreciate how you forgave them before they even apologized. They didn't appreciate the way you knew their flaws and still chose them. Now they're encountering people who won't tolerate even a fraction of what you accepted. And reality hits them hard. You weren't demanding. You were balanced. You weren't clingy. You were loyal. You weren't soft. You were golden, and they treated gold like dust. Now they're left with hands full of sand. They can't replicate the comfort you provided. They can't recreate the peace you brought. They can't revive the magic you naturally radiated. And each disappointment feels like punishment for taking you for granted. Their ego dies a little each time they realize the people they chase now don't stay. They don't invest. They don't care the way you did. Because what you brought to the table wasn't normal, it was exceptional. They thought they were the prize, the catch, the rare one. But losing you showed them the truth. You were the blessing. You were the shift. You were the upgrade. And now they're stuck with the uncomfortable knowledge that they fumbled something extraordinary. They remember the softness of your voice, the way you listened without judgment, the way you made them feel safe, and they know deep down they won't ever experience that combination again. That realization gnaws at them, day after day. They replay your laughter now, realizing how genuine it was. They replay your words, realizing how wise they were. They replay your loyalty, realizing how unwavering it was. And all they can do is wish they had treated you better when they had the chance. You set a bar they can't reach anymore. Not because others aren't good enough, but because the version of them who had access to you no longer exists. They burn that version trying to impress the wrong crowds. Every time they look into someone else's eyes, they search for your fire. Every time someone touches their hand, they look for your warmth. Every time they feel lonely, they crave your presence. But replacements don't heal regret. They're bumping into the consequences of mistaking your love for weakness. They're learning that strong souls don't beg, they move on. And once they move on, no force on earth can bring them back. They didn't just lose a person, they lost a future. Every road they walk now is haunted by the thought of what could have been if they had simply matured, cared, and chosen you properly. The thought follows them like a shadow that never fades. You were the one thing in their life that wasn't temporary. You were the one they could have built an entire world with. But they chose chaos, ego, pride, and now all they're left with is the ache of realizing that you were the safest place they ever had. Time will pass, years will shift, people will come and go, but the memory of you will stay carved into the back of their mind like a scar they gave themselves. They'll forget faces, forget names, forget moments, but they'll never forget you. Because you weren't just someone they loved. You were the standard, the blueprint, the bar no one else can reach. And that is the punishment life gives to those who mishandle rare souls. They will search for you in everyone and never find you again. They didn't realize that once someone experiences a presence like yours, every connection after feels half awake. That's why they wander through people like someone flipping through static channels, waiting for a signal that feels like what you effortlessly were. But the truth is simple, they won't find it. Not because others aren't good enough, but because what you brought wasn't something that can be copied, mimicked, or manufactured. It was born from who you are, not from what you did. They replay your conversations in their mind now, trying to understand how you carried so much weight with so few words, how your silence said more than other people's paragraphs, how your presence felt like a mirror and a challenge at the same time. They didn't appreciate it when they had it because they assumed you'd always stay. But losing you taught them the language of emptiness, and its fluency they never wanted. They sit with the realization that they didn't upgrade when they left, you did. While they tried to find someone easier, more predictable, more bendable, you became someone stronger, colder, wiser. You grew in ways they'll never be able to understand. And now you're the version of yourself they always hoped you wouldn't become, the one who doesn't need them at all. Their mistake wasn't treating you badly. Their mistake was treating you badly while assuming you'd never change. They believed your kindness was dependence. They believed your patience was weakness. They believed your effort was lack of options. And now they're learning the most painful truth. You were never the one who needed them. They were the one who needed you. They scroll through people's faces, hoping something sparks the familiarity you once gave them without trying. But nothing lands. Nothing sticks. Nothing feels real. Because you weren't just a person, you were a standard, a level, a league they never earned but were lucky enough to touch. And now that you're gone, they walk through their days comparing everyone to a memory they ruined. They remember the way you made them feel seen, understood, valued, and challenged. They remember the way you encouraged their growth even when they didn't appreciate it. They remember the way you corrected them with respect, not humiliation. They remember the way you carried yourself with quiet strength. And now, they realize that those qualities aren't normal, they were rare, priceless, almost impossible to find again. They finally understand why people say you don't meet someone like that twice. Because someone like you isn't a coincidence, you're a turning point. And they treated a turning point like a temporary stop. That's why they're stuck now emotionally, mentally, spiritually, because the moment they mishandled you, their story stopped progressing. They replay the details of your presence like a movie they didn't know would become their favorite until it was too late. The way you listened, the way you spoke, the way you noticed things others always overlooked, the way you carried dignity even when disrespected, the way you never needed loudness to make an impact. They missed the subtlety of you, the depth of you, the steadiness of you. And the scariest part for them is knowing they'll never experience it again. Others come with noise, drama, insecurity, and expectations they can't meet. With you, everything felt elevated not because you tried, but because your energy carried a weight that commanded sincerity. They left thinking they'd find better. They come back realizing they'll only find busier, louder, needier, not better. Now they understand why your absence is louder than your presence ever had to be. Because when someone loses a standard, everything becomes a downgrade. And no matter who they date, who they chase, who they settle for, none of them can offer what you did. Authenticity without performance, depth without chaos, love without conditions. You laughed not because it was funny, but because it was finally predictable. Their betrayal didn't hit you like a surprise. It landed exactly where you expected it to. And that laugh, that quiet, sharp exhale of disbelief, that's what shook them. They wanted to see you crumble, break, panic. Instead, you smirked like someone who already knew how the story would end. You laughed because their betrayal confirmed everything you already suspected. The patterns, the inconsistencies, the sudden switches in tone, it all made sense. Betrayal wasn't a plot twist. It was the last missing puzzle piece. And when you finally placed it, the picture was so clear it made you laugh at how obvious it had been. You laughed because they genuinely thought they were smart enough to fool you. They underestimated you so deeply that it became comedic. They believed their little schemes were invisible. But you saw every move, every slip-up, every crack in their mask. You laughed because their betrayal wasn't clever, it was clumsy. You laughed because you had already detached long before they made their move. The betrayal didn't injure your heart. It only confirmed the exit you'd already decided on internally. You weren't heartbroken, you were validated. And nothing terrifies a betrayer more than seeing the person they tried to wound standing calm and unshaken. You laughed because pain was what they expected, tears were what they anticipated, anger was what they were prepared to deal with. But laughter? Laughter meant they never had the power they thought they did. Laughter meant their betrayal was too small to matter. Laughter meant they failed. You laughed because their betrayal was almost pathetic. You saw how much effort they put into hurting you, and for what? To create a story where they felt powerful for once? To get a reaction that would feed their ego? Instead, you responded with the one thing their ego couldn't swallow: indifference coated in humor. You laughed because you saw the irony. They betrayed someone who had no intention of harming them. They stabbed a heart that only ever showed them warmth. They burned a bridge you were already done crossing. The whole situation became so absurd, the only response left was laughter. You laughed because betrayal reveals character, and their character was nothing but insecurity dressed in manipulation. You realized they didn't betray you because you were weak. They betrayed you because your strength made them feel disposable. That realization alone was worth a laugh. You laughed because, in that moment, you saw their true fear. They expected your world to fall apart. Instead, it was theirs that cracked. Because when you smiled at their betrayal, they realized they miscalculated you entirely. They weren't dealing with the version of you they thought they were dealing with, the version they accidentally created. You laughed because they showed their hand too early. Their intentions slipped, their ulterior motives leaked, and the moment the truth surfaced, you realized how little their presence meant in your life. It's always easier to laugh when the game ends exactly how you predicted. You laughed because it hurt them more than any confrontation ever could. They wanted drama, chaos, tears, some performance that proved how deeply you cared. Instead, you simply walked away laughing, leaving them with a silence they couldn't interpret, couldn't control, couldn't escape. You laughed because you knew something they didn't. You always bounced back stronger. Their betrayal didn't weaken you. It refined you. It sharpened you. And that inner glow of resilience, it terrified them more than your anger ever would. You laughed because their betrayal freed you from illusions, from false loyalty, from unnecessary attachments. Sometimes betrayal is the last push you need to step into your higher self. Once the weight of their presence fell off, all you could do was laugh at how long you carried it. You laughed because you realized how small they truly were in the big picture of your life. You once placed them on a pedestal only to discover they weren't even worthy of the first step. Betrayal didn't shrink you, it shrank them. That alone was amusing. You laughed because it was the last emotion you needed to close the chapter, a moment of clarity disguised as a chuckle, a release, a signal to yourself that you no longer cared enough to hurt, hate, or hold on. You laughed because you saw the panic in their eyes. Betrayers expect revenge, not composure. They expect destruction, not dignity. Your laugh told them you were past the point of emotional negotiation. And when someone stops negotiating, they're unreachable. You laughed because their betrayal was a reflection of them, not you. You didn't fail as a person, they just revealed who they had been all along. And that truth was almost comical in its predictability. You laughed because you knew you'd come out better, cleaner, stronger. People who betray lose something they never get back: access. And there is no revenge more powerful than permanent inaccessibility. You laughed because deep down, they wanted to matter. They wanted their betrayal to be a turning point in your life. And realizing it barely scratched your surface destroyed the fantasy they'd built in their own mind. You laughed because they expected closure, maybe even forgiveness, but your laughter was the closure. Your silence after that was the consequence, and your departure was the lesson. You laughed because you didn't need to explain anything. The betrayal explained everything for you. Their actions spoke louder than any apology could. Their choices wrote the ending for both of you. You laughed because you no longer had any emotional connection left to protect. The betrayal killed the last pieces of attachment, so your laugh was the sound of the final bond breaking cleanly. You laughed because you knew karma had already taken your side. You didn't need revenge. You didn't need to expose them. Life has a way of returning people the energy they give out, and you knew exactly what was coming for them. You laughed because they were the ones who would live with regret, not you. They ruined something rare. They destroyed someone who genuinely cared. And now that you're gone, the full weight of that loss sits on their chest. You laughed because, in the end, you won. Not through retaliation, not through cruelty, but through the power of walking away untouched while they stood trembling, realizing the truth. You kept laughing because their betrayal didn't end you, it ended the illusion you once held of them. That freedom, that clarity, that sudden removal of emotional weight, it felt almost divine. And that terrified them, because your liberation meant their importance was nothing but a fading shadow. You laughed because you finally understood the truth. They betrayed you not because you were weak, but because you were strong in all the ways they wished they could be. Your loyalty, your patience, your heart, all the traits they lacked made them envious. They couldn't handle standing next to someone who naturally outshined them. You laughed because their attempt to hurt you was the loudest confession of their insecurity. People who feel secure don't sabotage those who love them. Only the broken destroy what they cannot match. And once you realized that, their betrayal became nothing but a sad little performance. You laughed because you realized they expected you to fight for them. They wanted you to beg, plead, scream. But the moment you laughed instead, they realized they meant so little that you didn't even bother to resist. Nothing bruises a betrayer's ego more than realizing they weren't worth a reaction. You laughed because in that moment, you saw exactly who you were becoming: someone wiser, colder, more powerful. Pain didn't turn you into a victim, it turned you into a strategist. Betrayal didn't break you, it awakened a version of you they were never prepared to meet. You laughed because you could finally see your worth reflected in their regret. They didn't expect you to rise, they didn't expect you to detach so effortlessly. Watching you thrive without them shattered the fantasy they'd built that you needed them. And the irony? You were always the one holding everything together. You laughed because they finally understood the value of what they lost. All the care, patience, and loyalty you gave them, qualities they took for granted, became priceless the moment you withdrew them. Betrayal taught you to stop giving, and that lesson hit them harder than anything you could have said. You laughed because their betrayal exposed their entire character, not the version they pretended to be, but the one they hid from the world. Cowardly, insecure, desperate for validation. Once you saw that truth, it was impossible to ever fear them again. You laughed because the universe repaid them faster than you ever could. Life brought them consequences disguised as circumstances. Every lie, every manipulation, every disrespect, it all circled back. And you, untouched by vengeance, simply laughed as karma did what you never needed to. You laughed because you knew they would return. Betrayers always do, not for forgiveness, but for access. And that access, gone forever. Your laughter was the seal on the door they could never enter again. They're running now. That's the funny part. Not laughing funny truth is ugly funny. The kind of funny that crawls under your skin and makes you smile when you shouldn't. Your haters, the loud ones, the sneaky ones, the ones who lived off your reactions like parasites live off blood, they're backing away slowly, hands up, eyes wide, whispering the same excuse to each other. You're too dangerous now. Dangerous. Not because you scream, not because you threaten, not because you fight, but because you don't need them anymore. Once upon a time, they loved you predictable. They loved you emotional. They loved you explainable. They loved knowing which button to press to get which reaction. They thrived on your effort, your justifications, your need to be understood. That was the playground where they felt brave. That was where they talked the most. And now, the playground is empty, and they're standing at the edge, wondering when you stopped needing the game. They call you dangerous because you broke the unspoken contract. The contract said you'd always respond, always react, always care enough to defend yourself, always stay in the noise long enough for them to feel important. You didn't sign that contract consciously, but the moment you tore it up, they felt it like a punch to the throat. See, haters don't fear strength. They fear clarity. Strength can be challenged. Clarity can't be argued with. You don't debate anymore. You don't correct narratives. You don't chase misunderstandings. You let people believe whatever keeps them comfortable, and that terrifies them. Because comfort built on lies collapses fast when truth stops cooperating. They say you're dangerous because you don't flinch when they try to provoke you. They throw old insults, recycled stories, exaggerated versions of you like broken records, hoping something sticks. Nothing does. And silence? Silence drives insecure people insane. You used to absorb hits like it was your job. You thought being strong meant enduring. You thought maturity meant explaining. You thought growth meant staying polite even when disrespected. That version of you was useful to everyone except you. Now you've learned something that makes people nervous. You don't need to prove who you are to people committed to misunderstanding you. That's when the word dangerous entered their vocabulary. They used to laugh at you. Now they whisper. They used to confront you. Now they avoid eye contact. They used to mock your calm. Now they're unsettled by it. Because calm that doesn't come from fear but from self-trust feels like standing next to a loaded weapon that doesn't announce itself. You're not loud anymore. You're certain. You're not reactive anymore. You're selective. You're not trying to win. You're done competing. And when someone stops competing, the people who built their identity on rivalry start panicking. Your haters are running because they can't get a read on you. They don't know what you'll tolerate. They don't know where your line is. They don't know what matters to you anymore. Mystery scares people who survive by predictability. They keep saying you changed, like it's an accusation, like growth is a crime, like self-respect is betrayal. What they really mean is, you stopped making it easy for us. You became dangerous the moment you realized your attention was currency and stopped handing it out for free. They try to paint you as cold, arrogant, detached. They need labels because labels make fear manageable. But deep down, they know the truth. You're not cold. You're contained. You're not arrogant. You're unavailable. You're not detached. You're finished. Finished arguing with people who don't listen. finished explaining to people who twist words, finished shrinking so others feel tall. Your haters are running because you're no longer feeding the version of them that felt powerful. They don't get to feel superior when you don't respond. They don't get to feel clever when you don't engage. They don't get to feel victorious when you don't fight back. You didn't defeat them. You outgrew the battlefield. That's the part they don't recover from. They thought being cruel made them strong. They thought manipulation was intelligence. They thought control meant dominance. And then you walked away without rage, without revenge, without spectacle, and showed them how empty their tactics really were. Now they're left with nothing but each other. And that's a lonely place to be when all you know how to do is tear people down. They say you're dangerous because you're no longer accessible. Access was their leverage. Access was how they gathered information, tested limits, planted doubt. You closed the door without slamming it, and that quiet closure echoes louder than any argument ever did. You don't announce boundaries anymore. You enforce them by absence. That's advanced. That's grown. That's terrifying to people who rely on chaos. They used to poke you to see how much you'd take. Now they're afraid to poke at all, because they've seen what happens when you stop caring, and it wasn't explosive. It was final. Final scares people more than anger ever could. Anger can be calmed. Anger can be manipulated. Anger still cares. Indifference? Indifference doesn't negotiate. Your haters are running because you don't give them stories anymore. No emotional breakdowns. No public reactions. No messy explanations. You deny them content. And people who live for drama can't survive without an audience. They're calling you dangerous because they feel exposed. When you stopped reacting, they lost their camouflage. Their behavior looks ugly without your emotional responses to distract from it. Their words sound hollow without your engagement to give them weight. You didn't change the rules. You stopped playing. They don't know how to deal with someone who doesn't need validation, approval, or revenge. They don't understand peace that isn't performative. They don't recognize power that doesn't announce itself. So they do the only thing insecure people do when faced with something they can't control. They run. They whisper. They warn others about you. Careful, they say. They're different now, and they're right. You are different, not because you became ruthless, but because you became rooted. Rooted in self-trust. Rooted in discernment. Rooted in knowing who deserves access and who doesn't. You don't hate your haters. Hate would require energy you no longer waste. You don't even want revenge. Revenge would mean they still matter. What you want and what you chose is distance. Distance is lethal to people who survive on proximity. They're running because they can't manipulate someone who sees patterns instead of excuses. They can't gaslight someone who trusts their memory. They can't intimidate someone who's already walked through worse alone. They used to call you weak because you were kind. Now they call you dangerous because you're kind to yourself first. That switch rewires everything. They can't bait you with insults. They can't guilt you with history. They can't scare you with threats of exclusion. You've already excluded yourself from nonsense. Your haters are running because you've become ungovernable. Not rebellious, not chaotic, ungovernable. You don't respond to pressure, you don't bend under noise, you don't rush to explain. You let silence do the talking. Silence reveals who needs control. Silence exposes who needs reaction. Silence shows who never had substance to begin with. They're running because they know you see them clearly now. And being seen by someone who doesn't fear you is unbearable for people built on illusions. They used to think they were above you. Now they're not sure where they stand, and uncertainty humbles even the loudest mouths. You intimidate them because you're not impressed. You intimidate them because you don't chase. You intimidate them because you're not available for their version of reality. And the funniest part, the darkest joke of all, is that you didn't have to do anything extreme to become this person. You just stopped betraying yourself. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped tolerating disrespect. You stopped confusing endurance with strength. And suddenly the same people who mocked your softness are warning others about your presence. Careful, they say again. They're not the same. No, you're not. You're calmer, sharper, quieter, more selective. And that combination is lethal to egos built on chaos. Your haters are running because they can't reach you emotionally anymore. They can't provoke guilt. They can't trigger doubt. They can't lure you back into old dynamics. You've become the one thing they can't defeat. Someone who doesn't need to win. They'll keep talking. They'll keep exaggerating. They'll keep framing your boundaries as hostility. Let them. Stories are all they have left. You're too busy living. They say you're dangerous because danger is what power looks like to people who've never had any of their own. And here's the truth they'll never admit, even to themselves. You didn't become dangerous to them. You became immune. Immune to manipulation. Immune to projection. Immune to disrespect dressed up as humor. Immune to chaos disguised as connection. That immunity feels like death to people who fed on your reactions. So they run. Let them. Because the moment people who tried to break you start fearing you, you know one thing for certain. You didn't lose yourself. You found yourself. And that, to the wrong people, is the most dangerous thing you could ever do. They're shocked. That's the part that keeps them awake at night. Not angry, not confused, shocked. Because in their mind, history was a safety net. History was insurance. History was proof that no matter what they did, you'd hesitate, you'd pause, you'd remember, you'd soften. They built their confidence on the length of time they had access to you, not realizing that time only matters when respect survives it. They believed history guaranteed permanence. They believed shared memories were chains strong enough to keep you tied, even when things turned ugly. They thought laughter from the past could excuse disrespect in the present. They thought effort from yesterday could cancel betrayal today. They were wrong. And that realization hit them all at once like a door slammed shut in a quiet room. What shocks them isn't that you left. It's how you left. No build-up. No speeches. No dramatic final fight. Just a clean cut, a blink. A moment where they still thought they had time and suddenly they didn't. They replay it over and over, searching for warning signs. There were none they wanted to see. You didn't threaten to leave. You didn't beg for change. You didn't weaponize the past. You observed, you measured, you decided, and when the decision was made, you didn't drag it out for comfort. That's what unsettles them. People expect exits to be loud, messy, emotional. They expect tears, explanations, breakdowns. Those things reassure them that they mattered, that the bond was real, that the separation hurts you too. Your exit gave them none of that. It was efficient, controlled, final. They ask themselves how someone could walk away from so much history so fast. They don't understand that you didn't walk away from the history, you walked away from the pattern. History wasn't erased, it was evaluated. And when it no longer justified the present, it lost its power. They thought shared struggle created immunity. They thought loyalty once given was permanent. They mistook endurance for obligation. You showed them something they never learned. Staying too long can be more damaging than leaving quickly. The truth is, you didn't cut them off in a blink. You cut them off after 1,000 quiet realizations they never noticed. After moments where you chose peace over confrontation. After times you stayed silent instead of explaining. After watching the same behaviors repeat while promises changed shape but never substance. The blink they saw was just the moment the door closed. They never saw the slow walk toward it. They're shocked because they assumed familiarity gave them unlimited access. They assumed knowing your past meant they could predict your future. They assumed your capacity to forgive meant you lacked the capacity to leave. They were wrong on all counts. History made them comfortable, too comfortable. Comfortable enough to stop trying, comfortable enough to test boundaries, comfortable enough to believe you'd always choose the relationship over yourself. When you didn't, their entire framework collapsed. They feel betrayed by your decisiveness. That's the irony. They frame your self-respect as cruelty because it disrupts the version of events where they were always safe from consequences. They say, after everything we've been through, as if survival together grants permission to cause harm later. What they don't say but feel deeply is fear. Fear that if history wasn't enough to keep you, then nothing is guaranteed. Fear that relationships aren't secured by time but by behavior. Fear that access is conditional, not owed. They thought they knew you. They knew the patient you, the forgiving you, the version that stayed and explained and hoped. They didn't know the you who could detach cleanly once clarity arrived. That version scares them because it means you were always capable of leaving, you just chose not to before. Your cut wasn't emotional. It was administrative, like closing a file that no longer serves its purpose. That's what makes it sting. If you had left in rage, they could dismiss it as impulsive. If you had left in tears, they could believe you'd come back. You left in certainty. Certainty doesn't reverse itself. They try to remind you of memories, inside jokes, milestones. They don't realize those things aren't leverage anymore. Memories don't override disrespect. Nostalgia doesn't fix broken dynamics. The past doesn't get to bully the present. They're shocked because you didn't negotiate your exit. You didn't ask for reassurance. You didn't ask for closure. You decided closure was leaving. That level of self-trust feels cold to people who rely on emotional bargaining. They accuse you of being heartless. What they really mean is unreachable. They accuse you of being sudden. What they really mean is resolved. They accuse you of forgetting everything. What they really mean is you remembered yourself. They never expected you to choose self-respect over shared history. That choice rewrote the meaning of everything you went through together. It told them the bond wasn't unconditional, it was mutual. And once mutuality died, so did access. They're shocked because you didn't punish them. You didn't argue your case. You didn't try to make them understand. You simply removed yourself. Removal is the quietest consequence and the most permanent. They thought time invested meant sunk cost. They didn't realize time invested is also time learned. You learned what patterns look like. You learned what doesn't change. You learned how much of yourself you were giving away to keep things alive. And when learning outweighs attachment, leaving becomes simple. They keep asking how you could switch so fast. You didn't switch. You stopped pretending. Pretending takes energy. Clarity doesn't. What shocks them most is that you didn't hesitate publicly. You didn't ask others for validation. You didn't announce your departure. You moved privately, confidently, without seeking permission. That level of independence feels like betrayal to people who expected emotional dependence. They assumed you needed them as much as they needed you. That illusion died the moment you left without collapsing. Seeing you stable without them forced them to confront an uncomfortable truth. The relationship meant more to them as control than to you as survival. They feel erased, not because you forgot them, but because you removed them from your future. Being absent from someone's future hurts more than being criticized in their present. It means the story continues and they're not in it. They tell themselves you're cold now, that you're ruthless, that you're changed. These stories protect their ego from the reality that you simply stopped accepting what you once tolerated. Growth always looks like cruelty to those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. They thought history was a leash. You proved it was a lesson. They're shocked because you didn't look back. No lingering messages, no checking in, no emotional breadcrumbs. You left them with silence. And silence doesn't negotiate. Silence doesn't explain. Silence doesn't comfort. Silence just confirms that the decision is final. They didn't expect you to value your future more than your past. Most people cling to what they've already built, even if it's broken. You chose what you could still build. That choice takes courage, and clarity scares people who live on habit. They keep replaying the blink. The moment they realized they no longer had access. 1 second they were familiar. The next, they were outsiders. That sudden shift forces reflection they've been avoiding for years. They ask themselves if you ever cared. The answer scares them, yes, deeply, and you still left. That means caring isn't enough when respect is gone. That means love doesn't override self-worth. That means they can't rely on emotional history to protect them from consequences anymore. They're shocked because your departure wasn't fueled by hatred. Hatred would have tied you to them longer. You left because you were done. Being done is quieter and far more unsettling. They never thought you'd be the one to end it so cleanly. They assumed you'd stay loyal to the memory of who they used to be. You chose to respond to who they became. That choice dismantled every excuse they leaned on. They tell themselves they deserve more warning. They ignore the warnings you gave through changed behavior, reduced effort, emotional distance. Warnings don't always come as ultimatums. Sometimes they come as silence. Sometimes they come as withdrawal. Sometimes they come as you watching instead of reacting. They missed all of them. Now they're left with shock. Because shock is what happens when people realize too late that access is a privilege, not a right. You didn't erase the history. You honored it by refusing to let it justify your suffering. You understood that the past should inform decisions, not imprison them. And once you saw that clearly, leaving didn't require drama, it required honesty. They'll tell the story differently. They'll say you changed overnight. They'll say you were cold. They'll say the cut was sudden. Let them. Stories help people sleep when truth keeps them awake. You know what really happened. You reached a point where staying required betraying yourself, and you chose yourself without hesitation. That's why they're shocked, because they expected history to own you, and instead, you proved that history doesn't control the future. Clarity does.